let's start with a quick session of, a quick introduction session from each of the participants, starting with Zubair Sab. Zubair Sab, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah, you are audible now. I just wanted all of panelists to just introduce themselves so that our um, audience can, uh, get this message that who they are listening to and uh, having discussion with. So starting with Zubair sir, please, it's over to you, sir.
Yeah, so thank you very much. I really appreciate this conference being managed by University of Management and Technology, Pakistan. And this is really an honor to join this forum. I was very glad to know that this is the 7th forum in last consecutive years. So this is really cool. And about my introduction, my name is Zubair Anwar. I'm a thought leader at Biets Center of Excellence Global. I've been working in various capacities with some international organizations, including American Society for Quality. I work with them as member award board. I'm a chair elect for Quality 4.0 initiative. I'm service quality body of knowledge chair. I'm also member of TCC peer group. I'm also a senior member, author, and reviewer with American Society for Quality. As well, I'm a senior member with IEEE. I'm adjunct faculty with Technische University Munich, Germany. And I have been associated with World Conference on Quality and Improvement since 2016 as a judge, moderator, and technical reviewer. So that's my introduction. Yeah, would you like me to proceed further?
Yes, sure, sir.
Okay, so I will complete my part first, and then I think we can have a joint discussion. So these are a few of my research and publications. I
Okay, sir.
have been a project manager, co-author, and editor for service quality body of knowledge that we were able to evolve over the last few years with a high-level subject matter expert group from all over the world. I have also an honor in contributing to Juran's Quality Handbook 7th edition. In addition to that, I have some books on supply chain and some research papers. I was given a combined award from edX USA and TUM University Germany for my contribution to the Lean Six Sigma professional education program by Technische University. I've been featured on social media by American Society for Quality and my other international associates multiple times. Recently, in September 2020, I was featured in the world's largest circulation quality progress magazine. I have honor of meeting a lot of quality gurus around the world. So this is my brief introduction, and now I would like to uh, contribute to the panel discussion, and we have been given some questions to talk about. So first of all, I would like to share my views on how quality education has impacted globally due to current pandemic, and what are the snapshots from different places. So if we look around the world, we see that the impact has been uneven. So some countries like we have Australia, Dr. Ishaq is here, New Zealand, they were impacted, but they were able to take control of the situation as early adopter of the SOPs and other precautions. Later adopters like United States and United Kingdom, they were affected the most. And developing countries, obviously, they were also impacted the most. The intensity and fatality has also been changing around the world, and even in the second wave, it would be different. Now, the economies and societies have faced a loss in different aspects. We can see clear decline of GDP growth. We can see that global recession are following this pandemic. There are a lot of layoffs. Organizations are firing their employees, including the education sector. There have been a lot of mental and medical issues. not only because of COVID direct, but due to lack of attention by hospitals because they were prioritizing attending corona patients. Higher education institutions were also closing down, especially in the developing countries, because of problems like equity, getting the grants. And what they did, they started shifting to digital platforms. But the institutions which were used to conduct on-campus classes, who used to have uh, assessments in the examinations hall physically, they faced a lot of troubles in keeping the quality levels and maintaining the pace of assessment and imparting the education. So mostly they were able to adopt internet and online technologies as alternative media of instruction, but effectively how did they do is really a big question. And if we see few causes, these include some untrained faculty. They were not given any training because all of a sudden everything shifted online. And students, especially who were doing some part-time jobs, their fee power was really compromised, and they were not able to make fee on time. And to reduce operational expenditure, a lot of layoffs have been observed all around the world. And in developing world, especially, the teaching and research activities were revised, and there were a lot of cuts on the budgets. And the visa policies, because of so many uh, outbreak to control the pace, many countries imposed sanctions on traveling, visas were revoked, and universities became online platforms. So this has actually more impacted, and we will discuss in a while. So if we look at the second part, that what are the measures of for disaster management and business continuity for education sector in the middle of this pandemic. So I would like to share that a lot of institutions made their way to the digital platform. So this was an unplanned and swift migration to the digital platforms. If we look, the developed world was actually ready to handle this crisis in a better position compared to developing world. So platforms like edX and Coursera were already there. And if you know that 13,000 MOOCs are available today while we are speaking. Only Harvard University offers like 250 MOOCs on internet. So, but rest of the universities have to follow the suite. But there were a lot of gaps. Zoom became a global tool to conduct the class. Microsoft Teams and Skype and YouTube were all adopted for a real-time communication and for asynchronous communication for the dissemination of academic activities, lectures, and class activities. If we look at the third aspect, that what is the silver lining in this cloud? This is a problem, but it also has a silver lining. So what are the opportunities vested in this pandemic for professional and academic education? See, this is a good time for us to improve skills. So upskilling for the staff, for the students, for the faculty, for the universities, for the higher education commissions. It is a golden opportunity. They can really kick start a program to upskill their staff to become more effective and productive for imparting digital education. Now, this is very important. Most of the universities have adopted internet as alternative media, but this is not really digital education. It is online. So they have just changed internet with the classroom environment. Rest everything is the same, which is a question mark. So like technologies under industry 4.0, like artificial intelligence, cloud computing, big data, robotic process automation, chatbots, service boards, all these processes end to end can be digitized. And I'm sure that it is a golden opportunity for everyone to join this mainstream. The next part is about the models which are being adopted by educational institutions to improve the quality of education. But for that part, remember, the transformations have three parts. One is the change of mindset. So the mindset has to be a ready cultural change. Second is the tool set. And then the third one comes the skill set. So these transformation programs should be designed on these principles of change management. It should be actually looked at the opportunity more than just change of medium of instructions. And we have to have proper checks and balances. A lot of malpractices have been reported. For example, students have been posting their assignments on some freelancing groups, asking for people to help them against certain payments. Online open internet, open book exams, they are really being managed with a lot of question marks. So a proper training should be given to the faculty, to the staff, that how they should design open book exams, open internet exams, so that there could be proper checks and balances in place. And the education should be linked to employers and industry. So just talking about theoretical things may not help that much. So for example, in developing countries, I would like to share very interesting analysis that most of the PhD dissertation thesis, they do not really apply to the industry. They are just addition to the knowledge base. So theoretical discussions, coming up with frameworks without testing them. So that may not help the industry in its essence. So for that purpose, this is very important to disassociate research degrees from the administrative post. Now, see, if people have qualified a PhD, they are doing research and they have been declared best to conduct the research, they have been listed as this research, then they should be engaged into research activities. And the academia industry gap should be bridged. The projects, the thesis, the topics should be actually pushed from the industry, and the students in postgraduate and pursuing the doctorate programs actually should be focusing on solving those problems. But unfortunately, in higher education institutions, the research papers and those research degrees are considered for placement on the administrative positions, which is really a question mark. So I would like to move to the next dimension, and it is how the education sector should be transformed to develop and sustain quality and excellence in 21st century. Well, with this, I will actually also share with you some of the examples from our exposure and experience of working with some international organizations. So for example, American Society for Quality, it is collaborating with a lot of institutions. American Society for Quality is the oldest and largest body of quality all over the world, and it's a champion in quality to lead standardization and best practices. So the certification that students earn could be adjusted against some credit hours, could be adjusted with some waivers. And remember that ASQ certifications are based upon best practices and ISO standards. So with the digital education model, we need also to advocate digital social responsibility. We need to really adopt the philosophy that was given by Alvin Toffler. We need to learn, then we need to unlearn, and then we need to relearn. So organizations need to define their digital objectives. Universities have to have digital objectives. I would also like very interesting study from my friend, Dr. Jiju Anthony, from University of Harriet War, and he shared with us that according to their research, organizations with the Lean Six Sigma, even in the education sector, have been performing fantastically during this pandemic. Now, quickly, I would share some of my experience with ASQ, TUM, and Bytes Center of Excellence. So ASQ took measures, and the certification exams were actually moved to the home. So students and the professionals were allowed to take exams from their home. World Conference on Quality in 2020 has been administered virtually. Six Sigma Conference also virtually, and we are actually promoting a virtual conferences, gatherings, and breakout sessions. And ASQ is also equipping the members with a lot of tools. So it is not just that professionals need to find tool by themselves. With TUM, I would like to discuss, this is really a good success story. Over 300,000 students have actually attended this massive online open course on Lean Six Sigma. And we have been able to promote this online education with a digital model. So edX provides some digital tools, And we have been able to actually impart to the students about digital body language, code of conduct, netiquettes, and other things. The last one is on Byte Center of Excellence. And we have been, if we talk of Pakistan, we have been working with like Sameda, we have been working with Punjab government and national government to promote the professional learnings and courses through use of internet technologies. So that's all from my side. If you have any questions, I'm available during this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zubair Saab. It's really an honor that you joined us, and for your insightful thoughts. Let's move on towards Mr. Usama Abdul Samad Saab. Usama Saab, please a quick introduction from your side.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Usama. I am with a consulting organization in the US. We also have a branch office here in Pakistan. We are involved in executive development and training programs, and we have actually offices in some other parts of the world as well. I appreciate the fact that you all have given me the opportunity to be as part of this group and hear your thoughts, especially on this very important topic, how the quality of education is being impacted due to COVID-19 and all its effects. It's not really only in the university or the school environment, but also at the professional level. Organizations and professional training programs were also impacted, somewhat in a positive and maybe in some degree in a negative manner. So these are a few things that I'm looking forward to hear from the rest of the panelists and maybe talk a little bit more about these things. Thank you.
Sure, Usama Saab. We'll be surely having an exciting discussion now. Let's move on to Dr. Ishaq Bhatti Saab to please introduce himself. Ishaq Saab, it's up to you.
Thank you. My name is Ishaq Bhatti, as you heard. I'm from Australia, not from Norway. And during COVID time, so we work very hard at the university level to control our SOPs. Australian government asked each province or state to be independent to implement educational quality, and to our state, Victoria, Melbourne imposed curfew on to implement COVID SOPs. So curfew means army and police control all the streets, all the campuses, and they instructed us what sort of SOPs we have to follow. And the universities become deserted, and we went on Zoom facilities. And as you know, Australian education is very expensive, and 50% of our students were from overseas. And to maintain the quality, we set up Zoom classroom, Zoom tutorial, and then 24-hour helpline to the students to provide them. We had open exams, open book exam, but we give assignments which are work related to COVID and pandemic, and our quality of education have some sort of decline because the students start copying from each other on the link, and we have implemented an extra SOPs during COVID. We call it Quality Education Control SOP for students and for staff. And this has improved a lot during the second semester, because the first semester our started from 1st March, it finished in June, where we had a lot of trouble with the students. They were cheating, competing each other. We then set up a few check and tests, which has enhanced the quality of our delivery, tutorial classroom, and lab on the computers. So we have the student, though it was a very difficult time, but due to control and set up an extra SOPs by the educational institution through security services, police, secret services help us how to control this. And we work like a family here. And also the students who cannot work to earn the money to pay the fees. So we set up zakat mechanism to help them as a Muslim. So we thought this is the Muslim communities to help the non-Muslims, to whom we're going to give interest-free loans. And also some of the students said we don't have computers and laptops. We provided, we give them a Wi-Fi access. And so in this way, we try to enhance our quality of education during pandemic. My 4 minutes are over.
And thank you, Dr. Ishaq, for your insights from your region. And with that, let's move on to hear from Dr. Samantha Rathnayak from Sri Lanka. Dr. Samantha, can you please introduce yourself so that our audience can, get that view that who they are listening to?
Thank you, Dr. Asim. So first of all, hats off to the organizers for getting things together, having organized this wonderful conference. My special thanks goes to particularly Dr. Mamuna Zareen. So she has done a wonderful job of coordination. And first of all, I want to remind my last year South Asian Management Forum memories in Pakistan. So really wonderful, just refreshing. Thank you very much all for those wonderful hospitality, and so we are looking forward to join again. Having said that, in my last 20 plus years, the first 10 years I have been in diverse sectors, like in United Nations, ICICI Bank, and some other corporate sector companies. And the last 10 years plus, I have been in the education sector. In Sri Lanka, there are a number of national level professional bodies. So I have been there in the governing councils, like in the Board of Examination, Board of Studies. And at present also, as per my introduction, it was said, I have been involved with as a policy advisor in education research and so on. So having that background, at present, I have been involved with one of the largest universities in Sri Lanka called University of Sri Javadhanapura, has one of the distinct unit called Postgraduate Institute of Management, PIM. There's a premier MBA education specified body, no undergraduate program. So my predominant current involvement with the MBA level and the doctoral level, but I would like to contribute to this forum discussion in a diverse dimensions. Having said that, to get this topic, the moderator has set a good setup in your mail. And what I want to tell you that the context has changed. The new demands have come. Of course, each country has taken their own steps. Sri Lanka too has responded in such way. At national level, this UGC, University of Grand Commission level, that's the main body of controlling everyone. In terms of the PIM, it reminds me in 2017, I went to Melbourne to take part in one of the global conferences in blended learning strategy. So after that conference, in fact, I came back and initiated a number of initiatives at Colombo. This is, though it's a small country, reaching to Jaffna, the northern part, that periphery. The Vaunia, Trincomalee is difficult. So we first open an opportunity to get the periphery into the center via this the technology-based learning and a couple of other initiatives. Yet the challenge is that the COVID has opened up an opportunity to steer up, speed up, get it to the real process. I think that's the discussion, Dr. Azim, the context.
Yeah, sure.
So with a short introduction, let me come back with the discussion question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Samantha. We are really privileged that you joined us, and we are looking forward to listen to what, how you are coping with those challenges of COVID in your education sector in Sri Lanka. With that, we are now moving towards our panelist member from Nepal, Dr. Pokharel. Can you please introduce yourself, sir?
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are clear.
Thank you. It's wonderful privilege for me to join this forum, and then also very much fortunate to have participation in this very important discussion. I represent Nepal Administrative Staff College, which is a civil service college in Nepal, and actually runs executive type of education. And I'm working there since last 10 years, and also working together with some of the universities like Nepal Open Universities and other universities. And also I'm a faculty of public policy and governance. Actually, I work in that area. That is my area of working. And I also work with the government, provide several policy recommendations, several other research, and sometimes including the policy recommendations and education reform and other sectoral reform. So we are having a tough time here. So because of COVID and several other issues, and there are new issues are unfolding. Right today, there is a big political change that is happening, undertaking currently. So the Prime Minister has dissolved the Parliament. So the current ruling party enjoys almost 2/3 majority, but in midterm they have dissolved the Parliament. Maybe it will have some other political unrest in coming days that will have again impact on both fighting towards this COVID and getting this all economy or education system into the back track and in the right track. So I love to discuss some other issues, I think, in later on in the discussion round. This is my short introduction, and also thank you very much for having me in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. for your discussion. Surely we'll seek your, governance and policy side of, managing this with this COVID pandemic and how you cope with this quality education problems in Nepal. And our last panelist member is Dr. Ijaz Qureshi. He's ex-rector of NCBA and founding rector of Gift University. Ijaz, it's up to you. Please, if you can, please introduce yourself. I guess Dr. Ijaz is disconnected. So let's start formally with a bit of discussion on how this quality education has been impacted due to this COVID pandemic. Although it's something, the quality education for all, for example, is something which has been there for many years because of inequitable quality of education to different geographical regions in the world. And it's also, one of those SDGs which UN is trying to, to set goals against. In fact, their aim was to eliminate that, illiteracy by 2030, which was, although, quite away in terms of not doing so much from world's different forums. However, this pandemic, makes things worse for them. So, for example, let me share this slide with you. It's being, provided. It's a summary provided by United Nations that before COVID-19, for example, the pace for quality education for all was quite slow. So it was expected that, still we have to face over 200 million children out of school by 2030. However, this now, with rise in this COVID-19, pandemic, it implicated it very, it worse it in a way that 90% of all students are out of schools now, which mean that we are reversing the years of progress which we made throughout the last 15 years on education, and we are now back to one. And more importantly, this impact is even worse on countries which are low to middle level income. So, for example, if you see on the last, for example, only 65% of the primary school children have basic hand washing facilities, which also reflects that this pandemic is even worse for those students who are, getting education in those countries where, hygiene conditions are not good. So this is something which really is making problem for education to move on. Moving on, again, a UN United Nations published a policy report in August 2020, a couple of months ago, and they provided it with certain stats, which I would like to share with you. And the stats are quite astonishing. So, for example, let me, I guess, I've made. So, for example, this, astonishing fact is that almost 1.6 billion students are out of school now throughout the world, which means that we are at verge of having a generation who is not able to get access to quality education. Throughout, and it's again, as I said, it's worse in terms of when it comes to situation in countries with low or middle incomes. So closure of schools due to this, this pandemic makes it impossible for students to go to school. So, for example, 94% of the world student population, it's out of school now. Although with situations going better, we expect that they went back to school, and this situation again is alarming when it comes to low and middle income countries, because 99% of those country students or children are out of school now. If I share a situation in Pakistan in the local context, this is second lockdown going on. Before that, when first lockdown was over, 8 million of the students which were going to school before COVID was not able to join back, which means that they are unable to join their education back because of many reasons. It could be financial, or it could be because of the fact that parents wanted them to be not to go to school because of as a precautionary act. However, 8 million is a huge number. Right. So next is that 23.8 million additional children. They are unable to now. They may drop out or not have access to school next year, which is the impact of this pandemic alone due to COVID. These 24 million throughout the world are the number which we expect that students will be either drop out or will be unable to go back. On the financial side, there is a staggering gap between what these low to middle income countries have to invest to make sure that their children are getting good education. And that number was 148 billion, which was the gap between what they are investing and what they should invest. However, we expect that this gap will be increased by 1/3, which means that by the end of this pandemic, they'll be having $200 billion gap in terms of managing a quality education in their surroundings. Okay, and interesting fact is that it affects at all levels of educational training. Starting with the school level. 40 million children worldwide have missed out on early childhood education. Now, what it reflects is that at the very first stage of their life, the children who are 4 or 5 years of age are probably going to miss first experience of their life for 1 year. So their learning would be compromised. For example, their growth would probably not be the same as of those students who historically joined school at the age of 3 or 4. So this has huge implications for future generation. So these 40 million children will be late by 1 year in their life. In the same way, when it comes to college level or technical and vocational institution, for example, because of low digitization or IT infrastructure, we are way back. That is something which is brought up by this crisis. So we now realize that those technical and vocational institutions now require more fundings and more input from government agencies and donor agencies, so that they can bring you know, their systems intact so that, you know, skilled labor can be produced. In terms of higher education, although universities try their best to keep things online to make sure that student learning are not compromised, uh, and to some extent they are successful, that they are able to take their classes online. They use certain mediums, Zoom for example, or, you know, Microsoft or Google Classrooms for example. However, there still remain lack of information technology infrastructure, largely because that infrastructure was not available to all universities. So it was a division between a university with more resources who can able to cope very quickly. However, that left certain universities way behind because they don't have that infrastructure at that time. Moreover, there always is a lack of teacher readiness because teachers were not as such prepared for their for this online teaching mechanisms. So these are big challenges that COVID brings in, and it affected at all levels. However, it also as uh, you know at the very start, Zubair Sab said that it comes with some certain bright side, that as crisis comes in, we uh, we have seen that people come out with different solutions. They start thinking out of the box. They try to figure out that how student learning cannot be compromised, and make sure that they keep on learning in their classes and their learning materials. So we've seen certain innovative approaches. So for example, as I said, online teaching, teaching through Zoom or Google Classrooms. And then there are countries who tried teaching with the help of radio and television, and there are different mediums, for example, take home assignments and take home packages, so that they can so that students can learn with the help of their parents, for example, with the package available at their homes. And then distance learning solutions are also developed in a very quick time, that reflects that there is resilience within community of education, which left no stone unturned to make sure that their students learning of their students are not compromised. Uh, However, again, in this bright side, what uh, what has been done, we cannot, it has been done at different levels. However, the most important role was of a teacher, obviously, because they take that responsibility, the ongoing duty of taking care of the education of their students. And, for that, they have to at times work way more than their estimated hours. So this is something, again, which we really need to appreciate. Uh, United Nations have come up with certain recommendations for preventing learning crisis to becoming a generational catastrophe, which requires an urgent, action from all the stakeholders. So what they actually suggest is that you need to work out before it turns out to be a catastrophe for a whole generation. Before it uh, turn into a crisis which will take years to combat then. So starting with with the first approach is to make sure that you suppress transmission of the virus as an educational institutions, as Dr. Ishaq has said, that it was really hard for many countries and many institutions to make their employees and students to follow SOPs. It's something which we need to really work out. We have to suppress that transmission of the virus to make sure that we reopen, and we reopen safely, to save the life of student, of teacher, of parents of the student, and the family member, of all the stakeholders. So it's something which we really need to work on collectively. It's not only at educational level. It's a combination of participation from government agencies, from local departments, to educational institution, to general society, that they need to make sure that they are they behave like a responsible citizen, and collectively they can suppress the transmission. by following SOPs. Then number two is, important is to attract fundings and to make sure that financing are being released on time, and these educational financing should not be compromised, because at the when this pandemic hits in, the first cut which normally governments have decided was on training and development of human resource. So I guess this is time now, because we are on that high on that learning curve now, that we put that education financing back, not only at government level but also at non-governmental donor funding agencies, for example, and global institutions like UN and UNESCO, for example. Third recommendation was to make sure that we build resilient education system that brings the role of the educational leadership. It's always something which which can be controlled from the top management. If they are willing to do something, they need to invest in that, and probably that resilience of leadership would reflect into their educational system, and we'll start having a situation where we can offer an equitable and sustainable education to all our students. And then we need to again work on reimagine the education and keeping the pace with the change in teaching and learning, which is about upgrading the skill, as Zubair said in his opening speech, that it's an now continuous process. It's something which brings something for permanent duration. We now have to live with it. We have to make sure that we upskill ourselves. This is something again recommended for education institution to not only cope with this pandemic now, but it's something which they need to do in future as well, even after the COVID has gone. So these are certain thoughts which I reflect when I was going through this quality education context from different documents and articles. I thought I should start with discussing these issues with you. And let's now have a quick discussion from different sides of the world. So for example, let me throw my first question to Dr. Samantha, for example. It's about how that quality of education is affected in Sri Lanka due to those COVID, for example, because as I said that we have different problems in Pakistan. Students are not coming in, for example. Dropout rate is high because of many reasons, all the way from economic reasons to other social reasons. So how you are planning to, how that COVID is having that effect on education in Sri Lanka, and what steps have you taken to cope with it?
So wonderful question to start. It's a macro level issue. If I may say, in a neutral point of view, rather than just giving a very rosy picture from the government point of view, from a macro level point of view, of course, we knew the economic the conditions. For an example, we are talking about the digital transformations and so on. But as at last year, the figures, we knew that this internet penetration and the availability of the technology aspects is just 34%, the overall. So like in a context where we are talking about global digital, the major transformations in that light. So with the dawn of year 2000 in the 2020, so here we got this pandemic. Of course, as you said, Sri Lanka is not an exception. We had number of say turning points, like the first lockdown. Then we got opening for about 3 to 4 months. We had the national level election, and of course got the beyond Western province. There are 9 provinces beyond Western province. The other provinces schools open, and of course, as most of you have highlighted that in your presentation also, they are on the card, like like using from the television, through the other media, WhatsApp groups, and technology. All those models were used. But in terms of the national level initiatives, one of the main government run exams called at GCE advanced level, general education in advanced level, which while having the COVID, it has been successfully conducted. But in terms of the December examination point of view, that has to be postponed in 1 or 2 months to the next year. Having said that, in overall, impact is same. The current turnout in the school at a very mediocre level. The Western Province school, most of the schools are all closed. So you have actually very eloquently and comprehensively covered in your presentation, which are almost replica in Sri Lanka too, not an exception. But only the difference is that this pandemic has given an opportunity to explore certain options like more distribution, more decentralization, getting this main clustered national level education hubs centered. But in the university system, I think universities were discussing about over the years about digitization. Now they are compelled to do that. That's the only difference. So most of the universities are doing that. From a postgraduate level onwards, there are a lot of positives, that because the context is ready for such transition. But in terms of the other levels, as you rightly said, going down, of course, still mixed basket. We need to further explore, and it's too early to comment on the exact success. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Samantha. We are really grateful for your input. And let me direct the same question towards Dr. Pokharel, that, how they are facing this situation in Nepal, and how the governance side and public policy side of your government is trying to cope with it.
Thank you. Again, this is a very useful question. And also, I join with other colleagues that the situation is not much different with Nepal. I think we all have common or similar problems that we are facing. But one very important thing that we have to look at is this, we have to little bit go into some history of education system in Nepal. I'll not go very back, but I would like to remind you from 2015. So 2015 was a very huge, change maker for Nepal for two reasons. One, we had a very massive earthquake that destroyed, that impacted the large number of population, also including this education infrastructures. And in the same year, we also had a new constitution, and that constitution completely divided the roles of education, including others. And now the school education is largely, it belongs to the local government. Local government is responsible to manage all those things. So when we had a constitution, we had a massive transition as well. So all the political transition, administrative transition. And we were trying to make like a subnational government responsible to look after this education, especially the school education. So when we were in transition, and then local government, provincial government, they were trying to take their responsibilities. So in between, the COVID came in between. So what I say is that the local government were not fully prepared to look after this education, school education. Meanwhile, in some of the cases, there was a conflict between the responsibilities between the federal government and again this local government. And the whole system, again, that was in trap of this type of conflict. So who is doing what like that? And a lot of confusions were there. And then also we see some other couple of challenges. The one challenge, I think, again, this is not different with other country. So the one challenge was on the preparation. So when we started listening about the COVID in its impact in China and other countries, so Nepal entered into lockdown in March only, somewhere in March. And so in early stage, so there was no such preparation like that, and then everyone was thinking this was a transitional one. In couple of months or couple of like that, this will come under control, and then again we'll have a normal life. It was like that, but as it prolonged like that, so we completely miss our direction, because we failed to assess the risks. We also failed to assess our strength. And also we felt to like, even if you think to transform that from physical to online education, for an example, we completely failed to assess our strength. For an example, the issue of accessibility. So do the students have access on that one? And then are they fully prepared for that one? And even if they have access to these all technologies, do they understand what actually we are trying to convey on that one? And also the knowledge at demand side, what actually the students they want. And maybe the digital divide, which have been already like highlighted there, that surfaced, and also it again more exacerbated like that, so the digital divide between the urban students and the rural students living away from mainstream like that. And so they were very they're facing difficulties. And also, so again, both sides, not only from student side, but even from supply side, from school side, from teachers side, from university side, even from the government side, there were a lot of shortcomings like that. They were not fully prepared in terms of policy, in terms of administration, or in terms of all those like it's providing facilities, those all things. So they were not fully prepared. I think this took over again 3 or 4 months went like this. So what will be happen? What will happen? How it will do? I think so. It went like that for 3 or 4 months like that. And again, everyone was looking after. So if there will be any new like opportunities or new solutions like that. And meanwhile, we started thinking of alternative mode of teaching. Alternative mode of teaching again. Rightly, the moderator has highlighted. Or in some of the other presentation we have already highlighted there. So when we wanted to go to alternative mode of teaching, for an example, first we had to unlearn our past experience, which took a lot of time for us to unlearn our past experience, and then to again relearn, so the new experiences or new preparation for that one. For that one, we completely missed to prepare a transitional plan. So how do we actually transform from one crisis to another crisis, and then how do we again ensure that students are, they will not lose their rights to education that we miss. And also from demand side as well. So we completely again miss to assess the demand side as well. So what actually students they want, and what type of support they want, what type of environment actually they want. These all things we miss to have on that one. And somewhere there was a problem on assessing institutional capacity, like it's even from the side of government itself. So so government again failed to communicate appropriately, and then give a clear policy direction. So how should these schools move, and how should they they manage all these things. And I think everyone has same challenge like that. So there was a huge I think big emphasis on first controlling the COVID and then looking after other things. So then we were giving more emphasis on the COVID, for example, controlling of COVID. So most of the schools, they were made the quarantine spot or the early treatment type of things there, and then bringing people in that one. And Nepal again faced a huge pressure on the migration, like large. Nepal and India, we practice open border, and large number of people from India, Nepalese people from India, they return back to Nepal. So hundreds of thousands people they return in a day, and they were managed. We have to manage them into the quarantine. And the schools were used, public schools they were used, all the school facilities they were used as the quarantine center, and that had a long impact in school students like that. And it took again a long time to resume on that one. So I would say in a nutshell that we don't have a good experience on that one. But I think, and in a later stage, so again, so when in later stage there are some policy like a series of policy decision that government has made, because it made more, and it allowed local government, for example, to take decision on when to open the school and how to open a school and how to operate on that one. And the local government, they started opening school partially, even if there was not like a national decision to open all the schools. Local government, they started opening school partially, keeping the safety measures. Even despite these difficulties, some of the local government which were not that much affected, so they continued education. That is again good side of that one. They continued schools. They opened school, they continuously provided this teaching, learning, all of those facilities. But in summary, we say that we don't have good experience. And again, we suspect that at least 1 year of the students, that went into a very, confusion, something, turmoil like that. And we see the more impact to come in future. Thank you. I stop here.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Saab. You're right that, when it comes to government decisions and then departmental decision, there is this dissymmetry that, there are certain schools which are partially open. There are certain education institutions which are, completely open in certain areas. Okay, so let's, shift our, context to the context of industry now. So for example, let's have a, comment from the industry experts. Osama Saab, if I can please, if I can ask you, what would be the role of government and industry, in your opinion, should be to provide with fundings to educational, systems to improve this quality of education, for example, or what role that industry can play to build that infrastructure, which is largely we are lacking when we are exposed to this COVID. So can you please respond to your expert opinion, please?
Sure, thank you. I think there was a point that was raised in our discussion earlier. I think it was part of the presentation made one of the esteemed speakers, that this is definitely a very evolving process where everybody is learning how to manage this crisis. It's a new experience for everyone involved, whether we are from the academic side or from the industry side. There was a very good point that was raised earlier, that our PhDs and our higher education degrees are very much theoretical in nature, and they're not offering the research work towards maybe industrial solutions that we are very much in need of these days. One of the things I think where the industry can really help is work with these academic institutes, especially the higher education institutes, who have the who have the direct experience. I don't want to say direct experience in the sense that it's exclusive to them, but they have the platform where they can actually conduct the research, whether at the college level or at the the lower grade school level, of what specific type of technology that is now needed, that we should be researching and investigating and investing in order to go forward with this type of situation. Because as we all know, that this is not something that is going to go away very soon. It's going to be here in some form or the other, whether it's going to be to what degree we are able to successfully manage it. But the fact that it certainly brings out the demand for moving towards the next level of technology, where we can actually conduct our education system in a more distant education type format, with much more efficacy and the kind of quality that we are looking for, or that we aspire for in a in-classroom setting. So, for example, one of the points that was raised, and I noticed that thing, is that even our educators need to learn how to come up with ways of evaluating and conducting classroom and school tests in a way which is an open book, open internet type format. Obviously the nature of the questions and the way how the students will be evaluated will be very different. Now, all of those who are in the field of education know that there's something which is called closed book test, and there's something which is called open book test, and there's a take-home test, and there's in-class test. All these variants are present even in our schooling system these days, and based on the way how the student is evaluated, the nature of the test is actually formed in that manner. So now, internet and the fact that this distant education and all this thing is very much open in nature, right? We don't have that level of technology yet where we can actually monitor the student very closely, that how ethically and honestly he or she is conducting the test. So why not test them in a way where they do have the resources open in terms of responding to the questions and the evaluations that been put forward to evaluate them, and at the same time the integrity of that evaluation is maintained. So I think one of the areas, so this was actually my point number 2, but my point number 1 is that the industry and the academic institutes needs to work together to actually find out that what exactly is needed, and our research work, and especially our research work at the higher level, should be more focused towards this thing. This, I think, is would be a very good way of bringing the two bodies of research and development together, and then bring out more effective solutions that address these these issues where how the quality of education is now impacted because of the COVID situation.
Thank you very much, Samantha. Moving on with the same debate, and let's have a viewpoint from Zubair Saab. Zubair Saab, as you also mentioned, that there are infrastructural problems. IT infrastructure is not similar to all, and is not available to all all students. That brings back that fundamental question of right of education. I mean, if that right of education, if it is true that each and every children and individual have that right to education, is it the time to expand this question to include the fact that that right of education is something which cannot be achieved without connectivity? So that internet connectivity should be bring into the system in a way that it is attached with that right of education.
Yeah, so thank you very much. And that is the pain point that you have touched upon. Now, see, there are digital divides among nations, and then there are digital divides within nations.
Yeah.
So as you have mentioned, that it is compromising the right of education to the kids. So this is not only limited to the primary education or the toddler education. This actually prevails throughout our education system, secondary and tertiary and graduate and postgraduate. So this is the right time to recognize these rights. Now, the right to education, and I would say digital education, as you have indicated, that internet access is now the mode of education. The digital education may be way far beyond the current level in developing countries, but yes, this is a constitutional right, and this should be actually prioritized when the government is planning a budget, when government is thinking of starting new projects. So for example, public development sector projects, this should be prioritized. When you are talking about setting up smart cities, you are talking about setting up smart hubs, business activities, and you want to promote urbanization, corporatization, where you are going to get the skills from. So this should be the second focus. What we are developing in the educational institutions, are we only importing knowledge, or we are also developing the students to polish up skills? So this is a question mark. Now, for example, students graduate from universities, and from the same universities, they get admission into some other professional programs which are not part of the degree. So this is a dichotomy that actually is present particularly in the developing countries, and to some extent in the developed countries also. We need to revisit what we are teaching the kids, what we are teaching to the students. What is our pedagogy? So is it a digital pedagogy? If we want to develop the infrastructure, we want to actually increase the outreach to everyone near and beyond, in the urban areas, in the suburban areas, in the villages. What are the mechanisms? So why not, you see, some international organizations such as Facebook and Google, they are already spending, they have established funds to increase this outreach, so that the internet footprint is increased, the coverage is available to impart their skills. Now look at those employers. They want to hire the professionals against their skills. And some of the organizations, multinational, they are not considering the educational degrees, because they know there is a big disconnect in between what they have been taught in the class and what they are expected to do on the workplace. So right from the childhood, right from the primary education, we need to revise our educational objectives. So a national policy should actually come up, And this should have linked to the sustainable development goals, which you have shared in the middle of this session, actually. So I think this is a huge problem, and with it, there is a huge opportunity associated. Let us have a holistic approach. Let us connect to that SDGs. Let us revise our national policy. Let the provincial governments, district governments, everyone become part of it. Let us call the corporate people under corporate social responsibility, under digital social responsibility, to become the part of this initiative. Why not we initiate public-private partnership to come up with programs to administer skills under these educational degrees? So why do we have separate vocational education, separate professional certificate and certification programs administered by the same universities who are awarding degrees? So why do we have this dichotomy? Why parallel systems in the universities, schools, and colleges? So this is my take on this point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zubair Saab. I mean, it's a follow-up of some of the points which Usama Samad Saab made, and let's take those to the academic expert of our panelists. So, for example, if we can ask the same question from Dr. Samantha for that, to both of these panelists, they are of the view that there is still a gap between what we are teaching to our students and what skills are required by the industry. So, and this is becoming, worse in the case of COVID because of the loss of learning which students have. So my first question is that how should we cope with that lost learning? So, for example, learning which students are unable to do during this, this time, for example, last 1 year, how we will be able to, or what should we do to cope with this gap? And then, how would we train our students for mitigating that gap between industry, what is being demanded in the industry, and what we are imparting them as in terms of knowledge?
So, Dr. Azim, so here, if you look at your question, it has a broader sense of multiple dimensions to discuss. If we simplify this is I call as doing and seeing. So the industry wants doing, the academics, the universities love to bring the lens of seeing. So the seeing and doing, how to bridge. So in that sense, the level would vary. Now, in this context, I would like to highlight that the fundamental, the pedagogy, and the professor also mentioned one of our Professor Anwar, the pedagogy here, there's the traditional, the pedagogical to andragogical. So what is the current context where the learning is in the self, within the control of the person? That is called heutagogy. So heutagogy means the individual is in the process of learning. Now, having said that, without getting these theoretical jargons at this discussion, if you look at that, of course, Dr. Azim, your first question, lost learning is a question. But we can look at the tacit knowledge in a different form of exploitation as we progress. Probably that can be taken up because the let bygones be bygones. Anyway, we can't take that whatever we have lost. But this learning, how we are going to turn into the next, how we are going to manage this transition and transformation. So we are now in a transition towards looking at a transformation. But there's another point. This COVID, what is the biggest lesson it has taught us, whether we are in education or not? The lesson is that have we adequately prepared with the foresight? We love to talk about scenario future foresight, but are we adequately prepared? So in that light, the COVID has given us a lesson to get yourself prepared, get yourself to look at that, get yourself to look at all these possibilities of like setting your path, steering your path, navigating your path. The difference is, Dr. Azim, I have the paradigms for this, the two phenomena on this. One is managing the current problem, of course. That's a challenging one. The new scenario is that how to get aligned with upcoming demands, the unplanned areas, emerging areas. So in that light, it's a matter of looking forward and planning and getting our systems aligned. So whether it's a school level, undergraduate level, of course, master's level, the task is now the path is clear. So the academics and the professionals have a major role to now really come out from their comfort zones and really steer this path and then navigate in this paradox. So that's my main context. Thank you.
Very well said, Dr. Saab. If let's have insights on the role of academic leadership. If I can, throw this question to Dr. Pokharail from Nepal, that in your opinion, what should be the role of academic or educational leadership in resolving this issue? So, for example, how do they help us in getting out of this crisis?
Well, again, this is, I think, another most challenging question, I would say, most challenging question. We are expecting some sort of support or some sort of policy guidance, policy direction from the education leaders, which is, of course, very, very natural as well. What I see is that, because you see, fortunately or unfortunately, we have lost 1 year. So we all have to agree on that one. Despite there are some attempts, there are efforts to minimize those losses, but I don't think that they are fully recoverable. And I see this loss will be manifested in coming days, because already we have said that the dropout rates will increase, and also in many of the developing countries, like the child labors and child labor that will increase. Already they have started, so they have joined the job market and all those things there. And what I see the main role that the education leader can play is they now can sit together and then they assess the need, what they need, what actually the problem is. And also they have to assess their capacity, their strength, where they are, and then how they can do it. Not to make it overpromise, but also they can do something to bring something like a bridging package. How can we again bridge the gap that we have this year, and then again continue for the next year? So some sort of customized type of academic package, academic program that the education leader, they can again forward for that one. And also they can bring some sort of idea for minimizing the digital gap, digital divide, how it can be minimized for that one. And also I think this is again a question for all education leaders, that we have to reflect on ourselves, that what we actually are teaching. And why are we teaching that? Does it have any relevance to the job market? Does it have any relevance to the life of those students? Where they will use those things? I think these are the fundamental questions that education leaders, they have to continue to discuss and continue to brainstorm on that one. And based on that brainstorming, I think we can bring out some of the new solutions. I would say that one. And another big question is that we say that we are saying technology is essential, but again, the wise use of technology, appropriate use of technology, that has to again help the students, that has to help the students, and also that has to contribute in improving their learning, and that has to give some sort of skills so that they can use those types of skills in job market on that one. So how can we do that one? And much challenging, what I say is that the challenge at the elementary level. So the students who have just started their career, who have just started learning these all things there, they have several other social impacts and mental impacts. They have already started sitting in isolation, like sitting alone, and alone, and being engaged more on this digital device on that one, in the name of it's online classes or other things like that. So how can we again improve that condition and then bring them back to the normal one? These are the things that I think education leader can do it. So that requires, again, a holistic approach for making a policy and seeing on that one. So one good thing that in Nepal, a recent discussion has started is the government has started discussing on bringing a policy, such thing like education in crisis. How the education can be continued in crisis. So they have started bringing a policy on that one. Initial brainstorming has been, has started on that one. I see that if actually government will take that seriously and then do more exercise, that policy will be very much useful for this types of crisis in future as well. So I see, and there is a broad role of education leadership. And also, I think somewhere in funding policy as well, the resource allocation policy. This crisis has also shown us that, so many of the resources, they are spent on for, useless aspect, is more on administrative type of activities in administration and all those things. So I think the leadership can think of how we can minimize those types of expenses and then redirect that funding towards increasing the learning, access to learning or quality of education. So the leadership can think on that one also. So if we think on that, we see a significant proportion of its budget can be again redirected towards enhancing the quality of education instead of investing on some of the minimum administrative activities. And another important thing what I see is that in many of the schools you see that so there is very imbalance in teacher-student ratio. So how can we ensure that the teacher-student ratio will be properly balanced and then the resource will be allocated appropriately? These are the issues I think that the education leadership actually can take forward. And I think I totally support with all the colleagues that the improvement on the curriculum and then all the teaching methods, pedagogy, they require, they become again a part of the broader this policy framework. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I guess we have a very concluding thoughts from all the STEAM's panelists. So, for example, the role of leadership, just we have discussed that, how important that role is. Similarly, we have inputs from Osama Samad Saab and Zubair Saab, about getting the industry in and bridging that gap to make sure that our graduates are having a fine skills which are required, and then some points discussed by Dr. Samantha. Those are very relevant points that probably would help us to make sure that we go through this pandemic very smoothly and make sure that our education systems remained intact and our learning of the students are not compromised. With that, I would like to thank all the participants for taking time. It's always exciting to have esteemed panelists like you on the panel and have a discussion on important topics, like education and the problems which are being faced by during this pandemic, and that will also be faced, or problems beyond that pandemic. I would like to end this meeting, but before ending this meeting, can you, all of you, please turn on your camera, please, so that we can take a group photo for our conference organizers. Okay, so when I say 1, 2, 3, I guess all of you have to say cheese so that we have a better picture of all smiling faces. So 1, 2, and 3. Say cheese. Thank you very much, all the panelists. Thank you very much, all the contributors, for your deep and thoughtful insights. That definitely will help academic sector to have a better management of education in days to come, and that will help us to move through this pandemic very smoothly. Thank you very much, and with that we are ending this meeting.